The sun beat down on the dusty road of the small rural town when the girl stepped forward clutching a piece of cardboard in her trembling hands. Her braids were loose. Her school uniform was wrinkled, but her eyes burned with something heavier than shame, desperation. The cardboard shook between her fingers. Yellow letters scrawled across it read words no one could believe. Sell first night for $5 million. People gathered. Some gasped, some whispered, some pulled out phones to take pictures as though her pain was a spectacle. But the girl didn't lower her gaze. She had made her choice. Not for herself, but for the woman lying in the crumbling house outside town, her mother, fighting for life with every shallow breath. Her name was Anna. 17 years of innocence shattered in a single decision. The hospital had told her there was no hope without expensive treatment. $5 million. More than her family could ever dream of. So she had walked into the town square with the sign. The voices around her blurred until the growl of an engine silenced everything. A black car rolled to a stop at the edge of the crowd. The door opened slowly. A man stepped out. He was tall, sharp-featured, dressed in black like the city itself. His presence drew every eye and hushed every whisper. His name was Alexander Hayes, a billionaire CEO, ruthless in business and colder than the glass towers he owned. He leaned against the car door, arms crossed, eyes locked on Anna. The crowd waited for his words, but his silence pressed heavier than thunder. Finally, he spoke. "You would sell yourself to save her." His voice was low, dangerous, but curious. Anna's hands trembled, but her chin lifted. "Yes, for my mother's life." The man studied her as though she were a puzzle only he could solve. People began to murmur. Why was the billionaire here? Why was he speaking to her? But Alexander ignored them all. $5 million, he said. "I will give you the money." Anna's lips parted. Hope surged, but his next words froze her. "Not for a night, for forever. You will marry me." The crowd gasped. Anna's world tilted. She had expected shame, rejection, maybe cruelty. But marriage, this stranger, a man with eyes like steel and a heart no one believed existed, wanted her as his wife. She could hardly breathe. Her thoughts raced. If she refused, her mother would die. If she accepted, her life would never be her own again. Alexander extended his hand, his face unreadable, as though this was no more than another business deal. "Decide now," he said. The cardboard slipped from Anna's fingers and fell to the ground. She looked at her mother's frail face in her memory, then at the man before her, and in that moment, with the weight of the world pressing on her shoulders, she whispered, "I accept," and the crowd erupted, half in shock, half in envy, as Alexander Hayes, the coldest CEO in the city, claimed the rural girl as his future wife. As Alexander Hayes, the coldest CEO in the city, claimed the rural girl as his future wife. The crowd swarmed forward, phones flashing, voices overlapping in a storm of disbelief. Some shouted that Anna was foolish, others whispered that she was lucky. But she didn't hear them. Her heart hammered in her chest as Alexander placed his hand firmly on her shoulder, guiding her toward the car. She stumbled at first, her body stiff, but his grip was unyielding. The black car door opened, and she found herself pulled inside, away from the eyes of the town, away from the life she knew. The leather smelled foreign. The silence was louder than the crowd she had left behind. Alexander slid in beside her, his gaze sharp and unreadable. "You agreed," he said quietly, not looking at her. "There is no turning back." Anna clutched her skirt in both hands. "I only agreed for my mother. You promised the money." His eyes flickered toward her then, cold yet steady. "The money is already being transferred. Your mother will receive the best care available. From this moment, you belong to me." The words stung, but she stayed silent. What was her pride compared to her mother's life? She pressed her lips together and turned her face toward the window, watching as the dusty streets of her town disappeared, swallowed by endless highways. Hours passed in silence until the car pulled into the heart of the city. Towers of glass rose above her, casting shadows she had never known. Alexander's mansion loomed at the edge of the skyline, a fortress of steel and marble guarded by iron gates. When she stepped out, the world felt colder. Inside, maids and staff bowed as Alexander entered, but their eyes lingered on Anna with confusion and judgment. "This is Anna," Alexander announced without hesitation. "She is my fiancée. Prepare her room." Anna froze. Fiancé. The word echoed like thunder. The staff whispered, hiding their disbelief. How could a girl in a worn school uniform stand beside the wealthiest man in the city? Later, in the privacy of the grand hall, Anna finally found her voice. "Why me?" she asked softly. "Out of everyone. Why did you choose me?" Alexander stood by the window, his silhouette framed by the glow of the skyline. He didn't turn, but his answer was sharp. "Because you were willing to sell everything for someone else's life. That kind of loyalty cannot be bought." He paused. "And I need loyalty more than I need love." Anna's breath caught. His words were a blade precise, calculated, cutting into the fragile hope she might have carried. She realized then that she was not chosen for romance, but for a role in a game she didn't yet understand. That night, alone in the vastness of her new room, Anna lay awake. The city lights flickered outside, but inside shadows pressed heavy on her chest. She thought of her mother, safe now, breathing easier in the hospital bed, and whispered a prayer of thanks. But as the echo of Alexander's words lingered, she also whispered a promise to herself. "If he thinks he owns me, he is wrong. I will survive this. I will protect my mother. And I will never let him break me." She closed her eyes, unaware that in the next days, the cold CEO would test her vow in ways she could never imagine. She closed her eyes, unaware that in the next days, the cold CEO would test her vow in ways she could never imagine. The morning light spilled into the room like gold across marble. Anna woke not to roosters or the smell of her mother's cooking, but to silence. The bed beneath her was soft, layered with silk sheets, yet it felt like a prison. The door opened. A maid stepped in, her voice clipped but polite. "Miss Anna, Mr. Hayes requests your presence at breakfast." Anna hesitated, then rose. Her uniform, crumpled from yesterday, seemed out of place in this world, yet she wore it proudly, her last thread to the life she came from. The dining hall was long and gleaming, with chandeliers dripping crystal, and a table stretched wide enough to feed a village. At its end sat Alexander, already dressed in his sharp suit, sipping coffee as if the world bent at his command. "Sit," he said without looking up. Anna obeyed. Before her plates appeared eggs, bread, fruits she had never tasted. Her stomach twisted, not from hunger but from the strangeness of it all. Alexander finally set his cup down and studied her. "You look like a guest in your own home." She met his gaze with quiet defiance. "Because it isn't my home, it's yours." For the first time his lips twitched, something like amusement, but colder. "Not anymore. You are bound to me. This house is as much yours as it is mine. You will learn that." Hannah dropped her eyes to the plate, refusing to answer. The silence stretched until Alexander spoke again, his tone heavier. "Your mother is stable. The doctors say she has a chance now. My resources are limitless. Remember that when you question your choices." Her heart clenched with gratitude for her mother's life, but anger simmered beneath. He wanted her loyalty, but he wanted it chained, not given freely. After breakfast, Alexander's world pulled her into its current. He took her to meetings in towering offices, where men twice her age bowed to him in fear. He introduced her not as a stranger, not as a deal, but as his fiancée. And every time, she felt the weight of eyes on her, the disbelief, the silent judgment. In the car between those glass towers, she finally asked, "Why do you parade me before them? Don't you see how they look at me?" He glanced at her, his voice calm but sharp. "Because they need to know I choose what others will never dare. Their respect is built on fear, and nothing frightens them more than what they cannot understand." The he. Words left her unsettled. To him, she was both shield and weapon. That night, alone again, she sat by the window, staring at the city that glittered like diamonds yet felt colder than stone. Her mother was alive. She should be grateful. But inside, loneliness ached deeper than hunger ever had. Days passed, Anna moved like a shadow in Alexander's mansion, watched, whispered about, judged. Yet slowly, she noticed cracks in his ice. One evening, a storm raged outside, lightning carving the sky. Power flickered, and for the first time she saw Alexander not as the untouchable CEO but as a man standing in the dark, his face unreadable, his hand lingering on a photo frame she had never seen before. Curiosity pushed her words. "Who is in that picture?" His eyes snapped to hers, cold as steel, but something flickered behind them. "No one you need to know." She didn't press, but the image stayed, of a man guarding secrets as fiercely as he guarded her. Later, when she returned to her room, Anna whispered again the vow she had made to herself. "I will not break. I will find my place here, even if it is in the shadows, and I will uncover who Alexander Hayes truly is." She didn't know that her search for truth would soon lead her to the very heart of his pain. For Alexander, the marriage was never about love. But for Anna, survival might turn into something neither of them expected. For Alexander, the marriage was never about love. But for Anna, survival might turn into something neither of them expected. The days stretched into weeks, each one shaping Anna into a figure she no longer recognized. She was still the rural girl who once clutched a cardboard sign in the square, yet she had stepped into a role far greater, one written in marble halls and corporate power. But with each passing day, the question whispered louder in her heart: who was the man she had married herself to? The moment returned to her, the night she caught Alexander staring at a hidden photo frame during the storm. A shadow hung over him, an unspoken wound. And though his words were sharp, his eyes told another story, one of silence and loss. One evening, when the mansion lay still, Anna wandered the halls. She found herself drawn toward Alexander's private study, a room he rarely allowed her near. The door creaked open, and inside, the air smelled of leather and old wood. On the desk lay that photo. She stepped closer. It showed a young boy, no, older than 10, with a smile so bright it lit the picture. Beside him, a woman held his hand. Before she could turn the frame, a voice sliced through the quiet. "What are you doing here?" Anna spun. Alexander stood in the doorway, his face dark, his eyes unreadable. I was curious," she admitted, her voice trembling. "You always look at this picture. Who are they?" For a long moment, silence stretched. His jaw clenched. He walked forward and lifted the frame from her hands, staring at it as though it burned. "My mother," he said at last, voice low. "And my brother." Anna's breath caught. She had expected business partners, perhaps a friend, but family, this was different. "What happened to them?" she asked softly. Alexander's shoulders stiffened. His hand gripped the frame tighter. "They're gone. Both of them. Because of me." The words cracked something in him. He set the photo down sharply and turned away, as though afraid she might see the storm in his eyes. Anna stepped closer, her voice breaking through the silence. "You blame yourself, but you're not the only one who has lost. I know what it means to watch someone you love slip away. My mother is still fighting, but every day feels like it could be her last." For the first time, Alexander turned to her, not as the cold CEO, but as a man. His eyes, usually hard as stone, flickered with something human: pain, regret, longing. "Why do you stay?" he asked suddenly. "You have what you wanted, your mother's life. You could walk away." Anna's chest tightened. She should have said yes. She should have told him she dreamed of escaping, of running back to the fields where life was simple. But instead, the truth spilled out, raw and unguarded. "Because I made a vow to survive, to protect my mother, and now maybe to protect you too." The words stunned them both. Alexander's gaze softened just for a second before the mask slid back into place. He turned away, muttering, "You know nothing about me." But Anna did know something. She knew that beneath the empire, beneath the marble and steel, he was still a man carrying grief too heavy to bear. The days that followed shifted slowly. Alexander was still sharp, still commanding, but cracks appeared. He no longer kept her at a distance. At dinners, he asked questions about her mother, about her childhood. In the evenings, he allowed silence to linger between them without needing to fill it with commands. And Anna, though she tried to guard her heart, began to see him not just as the man who had bought her life, but as someone who, like her, had been broken. Weeks later, her mother was well enough to leave the hospital. Alexander arranged everything, the finest doctors, the safest care. When Anna walked into her mother's room, tears blurred her vision. She knelt at her mother's side, clutching her hand. "Because of him, you're alive," Anna whispered. Her mother's eyes shifted to Alexander, who stood in the doorway, watching silently. For a long moment, the older woman studied him, then looked back at her daughter. "You made a hard choice," her mother said softly. "But sometimes God puts us in places we don't understand, to lead us somewhere we need to be." Those words echoed in Anna's heart long after they left the hospital one night. Weeks later, Anna stood again at the window of her room, gazing at the city lights. But this time she didn't feel alone. She heard the quiet footsteps behind her and knew who it was before he spoke. "Anna," Alexander said, his voice lower than she had ever heard it, almost hesitant. She turned. His eyes held none of the icy walls, none of the armor. Only truth. "I told myself loyalty was all I needed," he said. "But I was wrong. What I needed was someone who would stand beside me, even when I gave them nothing in return. And you've given me more than I deserve." Anna's heart pounded. She stepped closer. "You don't have to deserve it. You just have to choose what to do with it." For the first time, Alexander Hayes, the man the world called ruthless, cold, untouchable, reached for her hand, not as a claim, not as ownership, but as a man asking for something fragile. Her fingers trembled, but she didn't pull away. In that silence, something unspoken passed between them. A vow not written in contracts or sealed in marble halls, but in the quiet beating of two hearts, scarred by loss, stitched together by choice. And as the city lights burned on, Anna realized the truth she had never dared believe. The night she sold her future to save her mother's life had been the night she stepped into the fire. But it was also the night she met the man who, piece by piece, might teach her that love can grow even in the coldest places. The story that began with desperation ended not with a deal, but with something far deeper. Two broken souls, bound not by force but by a promise they had never spoken aloud. And though the world would never understand it, Anna knew that the path she chose had saved more than her mother. It had saved her. And maybe, just maybe, it had saved Alexander too.